So, now to get to the real business, and an introduction for Andi Osho. Andi is an accomplished writer, actress, filmmaker, and stand-up comedian who has appeared on a number of popular TV comedy shows such as Mock the Week, Live at the Apollo, Michael McIntyre's comedy Roadshow, Last Call with Carson, Daly, and The Late Late Show. During that time, Andi also wrote, performed, and toured 2 sell-out solo shows and appeared at the O2 Arena in London and Just for Laughs Festival in Montreal. Andi's written for broadcasters such as Fox, BBC, and Sky, including comedy horror Twin Thing on Sky Arts and her own E4 sketch pilot, The Andi O Show. As a filmmaker, her award-winning shorts have screened at film festivals around the world. Andi tonight is going to be talking about the challenges and rewards of writing her debut novel, Asking for a Friend, which has been longlisted for the Comedy Women in Print Prize of 2021. Please welcome Andi Osho.
Thank you, Janet, for that lovely introduction. Hi, everyone. How are we this evening? Very good. Okay, so I've got a clicker, first of all. Don't want to brag, but I can move slides. I can make stuff happen. Well, first of all, thank you to the Liverpool Literary Festival for having me here. This is my second literary festival. So, yay. This is the best one. I said that at the last one. But it looks really good so far. So, I was going to talk a little bit about the challenges of... Did I say rewards as well? I did say rewards. Okay, so I'm going to talk about the challenges and the rewards of writing Asking for a Friend, which I won't embarrass anybody by making you confess whether you've read it or not, but it's basically, well, I've been calling it chick lit comedy, but someone said that I should start calling it contemporary fiction. So I think a little bit more something about it, you know what I mean? So I wrote a contemporary women's fiction novel. Got jokes. When did I start this? In 2017, and it was published earlier this year. And as someone who has never written a book, that presented me with quite a lot of challenges. The first one was kind of becoming a writer. So I'll give you a little bit of history of where I started, because it wasn't in acting, and it was actually, I worked in TV post-production, which basically is a role where I was in a role where I was kind of facilitating other people's creativity. So, we're talking about picture editing, people who were image editing, that type of thing. But I wasn't actually doing anything creative myself. And it got to a role that I had where I was just like, this is great. I love spreadsheets, because I had a lot of spreadsheets in my job. I love spreadsheets, but that isn't quite filling me up. And there was kind of, a momentum grew. It wasn't like I just suddenly decided to become an actor, but there was this kind of momentum inside of me that was kind of like, I'm never going to be fully satisfied by this job. I'm going to become an actor. And so I did, even though I didn't know how to. I did that for a couple of years. And in the meantime, I was kind of doing survival jobs, including being a tequila girl. Worst job I've ever had, FYI. And I won't go into the detail of it, but it was messy. And then I started to get sort of auditions were getting a bit thin on the ground, and essentially I was a receptionist because I wasn't auditioning. And so I thought, what can I do that's going to help me allay this kind of stage fright that I'm now starting to get, because I'm not getting in front of casting directors, or I'm not performing. I know, I'll become a stand-up comedian. Obviously, that's what you do. And so I literally just decided to become a stand-up comedian and start doing gigs. Now, at the same time that all this was happening, something else that was coming out of me in terms of creativity was that I wanted to write. When I started acting, I said to myself, look, even if I'm terrible at this, I have to give it a go. And it was almost like this thing that was wanting to burst out of me, like this creativity. And alongside that was the writing. But I'd never written before. So I was kind of making it up and writing some really quite terrible stuff that I very arrogantly thought, I'll just send this to ITV and it'll probably be on by autumn. It turns out it wasn't. But I just still kept going. And that's the thing with writing, you just have to keep going. But when I started doing stand-up, it changed people's perception of me, because it showed several things. It shows that you can write, and it also shows that you can perform. It shows that you've got a sort of degree of confidence, even if it is just manufactured, you know, for the moment that you're on stage. And so, you know, I started to get a little bit more into it, and an agent approached me and he said, look, publishers currently, they're looking for strong, funny women voices to get stories from and to publish. Have you got any ideas? Now at this point, Mock the Week's happening, live at the Apollo, McIntyre's Roadshow. So I was like, yeah, definitely, I'll write a book. Of course I'll write a book. And just carried on doing what I was already doing, because it felt like it was all kind of working out. And then as time went on in my stand-up career, I've sort of talked about this a little bit, but basically the best thing that ever happened to me happened. I got depression. Like, really can't get out of bed, don't want to work, depression. This was about 2012, and so I had to just stop doing stand-up. It was a classic tears of a clown type of thing. It just wasn't making me happy. And so instead, America, you know, full of joy over there. I went to America, and I was really going not to partly to leave something behind, but also to go to a space where I could just like kind of have a conversation with myself about what do I really want to do, who am I, and I'd felt really sort of penned in to a degree by the comedy label. It was starting to. I felt like, am I outgrowing it? Does it fit me anymore? And so I took a moment while I was in LA to just think, what do I really want? And I thought, I'm an artist, actually. Over time, I gave myself permission to just experience myself as an artist. And if I am, it's okay, she can go, don't worry. Everyone's like, oh, is this okay? Yeah, she's got things to do. And then I just said to myself, like, can I give myself permission to actually be an artist? And the short answer was yes. And alongside that, it meant that I could give myself just a little bit more room to think of myself as a writer. So I took a moment to write an idea for this agent who, for pretty much 10 years, just kept saying, you know, they're looking for, like, you know, strong female voices. Eventually, I did write this idea. And alongside that, I'd been writing other things, which Janet very, very kindly mentioned. But in terms of being an author, that hadn't happened. So I wrote the idea, and this presented me with my next challenge, which was getting a publisher. Because I wasn't seeking to be an author, I didn't have a clue where to start. So thank God this agent, Richard, who's amazing, had found me and sort of, you know, encouraged me to write this treatment. And so we went and we had a couple of meetings. We had one with, I think, Penguin, and we had another one with a writer, and they were like, yeah, we like this idea, write chapters, and we'll see. Arrogant. It's like, you mean for free? I was thinking, I'd say this in the meeting. I was like, you want me to write something for free? I don't think I will. So, I mean, this is just, you know, this is just how my brain works. And so then we went to HarperCollins, and we had a meeting with Lisa Milton at HQ Stories. And when I had created a 20-minute presentation on why I should let them publish this book that didn't exist, and I was just blown away. I was just like, I'm not going to lie, I was utterly seduced. Because they wanted me, they really wanted to bring this book that was called My Friend Fancies You. It was called My Friend Fancies You. And yeah, they really wanted to publish the book because it totally fitted their new remit, which was inclusivity, having, you know, roster of talent. And Lisa is a great advocate for that. So I was like, oh my God, I've got a book deal. They give me a one book deal. I've got a book deal. And they gave me advance. I got free money, which was fantastic. I was delighted. I was like, this is the best thing ever. But then it gave me my next challenge. Yeah. So I'd never written a book before. I think I tried once when I was like 11. I want to say, and I sort of gave up when I didn't understand the grammar and punctuation, so I gave up. So here I was, a little bit cocky, thought, how hard can it be to write a book? Turns out, it's fucking hard. So, I started writing this book. What I did, I don't know if there's any, are there any authors in here tonight? Potential authors? Am I putting you off? I was, but I don't think I want to now. I started off by, just creating a treatment, and then I did an outline, and I just kind of tried to figure out what's the story going to be. And then I'll get cracking, because I like to plan. I'm a planner when it comes to things like that. So I started writing this book, but I was painstakingly going over every single paragraph because I wanted to perfect it, because my logic was, if it's perfect, I'm not going to get any notes. So I would spend hours sometimes on one paragraph, and I was like, yeah, Mom, it's really hard writing a book because you have to get everything perfect and, blah, blah, blah. And then, a month later, I'd have finished a page. So I kept going like that. And I realized many things that I didn't know. It was like to that level of learning to write a book. I am not joking. I was like, and then, anyway, I'll tell you some other things I did. But thesaurus.com and dictionary.com were my good friends. I nearly acknowledged them in the book. That's how much they were important to me in the process. So eventually, with this taking 1 billion years to write the 3 chapters, that's how I got my first check, like for the advance, right? So I finished these 3 chapters. I sent them to editor, and that presented me with my next challenge, working with an editor. Never worked with an editor before. They tell you about your work in a way that you don't want. You don't have an editor. You just do. And then if the editor is the audience, you guys say whether somebody's funny, and if they're not funny, if they're paying attention to what's happening in the room, they'll go back and they'll edit themselves because you've let them know. Didn't work. But with this relationship, the editor was telling me, oh no, you need to do this and you need to do that. It was very lovely. All editors seem to be lovely, like really lovely people. But it was a real challenge for me to be working in this way of like submitting my work and feeling like Miss is crossing stuff out or telling me I've done it wrong. And after I'd painstakingly, like forensically perfected these 3 chapters. And so one of the things that I learned, my very kind editor, Charlotte, let me know at the time was, she said, listen, Andy, great start, really brilliant. The dialogue just leaps off the page, she said. But there is a lot of it. So what I'd essentially done is write a screenplay in book form, because that's how little I knew of what I was doing. But the minute she said it, I was like, I see what you're saying. Yeah, I see what you're saying. I can see it now. So I learned as I was going to write the book. Now that's a weird situation to be in, is to have to learn how to write a book as you're writing a book, but that's what I had to do. Googling, 1 million words for said. Or she told me at one point about head hopping. Does anyone know what head hopping is? No, I didn't either. It's when your perspective, when the perspective changes from one character to another. And I was just like naturally doing it because I was just like, well, she needs to describe what's happening. She can't because she doesn't know. She's like, well, you're going to have to find a way, girl, because, it gets disorientating for the reader. So there was all these things that I was having to learn as I was going. And, as I say, learning the process of writing a book, actually, as I'm doing it. So I basically learned how hard a book. The other thing that I learned is that sort of meticulous editing that I was doing was actually a form of procrastination. It was me stopping myself getting ahead because I got caught in the long grass of trying to make this perfect and actually not giving myself any room to get it wrong, maybe, to screw it up a little bit, and then trust myself to go back and correct it. And I also learned that it takes a different part of your brain to create something than it does to edit it. And that was a real, it landed in my body like a proper aha moment, because what I'd been doing is trying to do the creation and the editing process all at the same time. And my brain was like, my brain just couldn't compute. It wanted to do one thing. So I decided in screenwriting, we call it a vomit draft, where you just, it's gross, right? But you just, blah, everything out. Just get it out. And once I made that decision that it flew. Because I was learning to trust myself that I could go back and make it better. My fear in the beginning was that, oh, well, this is the best it can be, so I have to get it as perfect as it possibly can. But once I started to trust myself, then the process really started to flow. But there were other challenges. One of them was finding balance. So as Janet very kindly said in the beginning, there's a few things that I do. So I was still acting, and at the time I was in a play called The Miser in the West End. So we were doing 8 shows a week. I had a brief stint as a television presenter. Don't ask me why that happened. I think I needed the money. So I was as a presenter on a Channel 4 TV show called Super Shoppers. Yeah, it turns out I'm not as interested in consumer affairs as I thought I was. No, there's a camera. Okay, I'll just leave it at that. No, there was one time where I was talking to somebody from a very sort of important body that oversees pricing or something like that, and she was talking about the pricing of chocolate bars, and I was just like, oh, I don't care. I don't care. I felt really bad, but I was just like, I don't care. And that's when I realized I had to stop doing that. But at the time, I was trying to write the book, doing 8 shows a week. During the day, I'm presenting Super Shoppers, and somehow in the middle of all this, trying to find time to write the book. And what I learned from that is really that writing a book takes a different type of headspace, and how, you know, when a lot of writers have day jobs, a lot of us are doing something else, and it's only recently that I realized, oh, wait a minute, acting and, you know, screenwriting are my day jobs, and so I need to find a way to fit those in and make them work with writing, just like everybody else is, you know, juggling a day job or a 9 to 5 or whatever. And so it was a real challenge for me to get these things to work in tandem, not just as a time thing, but also a headspace, or kind of, you know, what part of your brain is required. Because I'm auditioning sometimes, which is very immediate, and then sometimes I'm writing a screenplay, which is short form, and there's a lot fewer words on the page. And then sometimes, you know, might be on a podcast or something like that, which is just chatting, no prep. So I had to go on this process of finding balance between all the things that I was trying to do, and at the same time, somehow deliver this book. So then my next challenge, it was navigating this brand new industry. Like, I had no clue. Like I said to you, this is my second literary festival, and I had no clue what the literary world was like. It's a very genteel type of humor. That's the first thing I found out the hard way, compared to the comedy world, which can be a little bit, you know what I mean? I don't have to explain it, because otherwise I'll just give examples that will, anyway. So it's very genteel. It's a lot slower paced. So that was the one thing that, or one of the things that really surprised me. So for example, there was one time where this is to compare it to the acting world. I had an audition for something, and I think I got a recall, like say it was the Thursday, and it would have been to start filming as a regular in this TV show on the Monday, some local to here. I've been packing up my stuff in London and coming up this way, and that was within the space of a week. That's how quickly things can happen in like TV land. In literature, my editor was like, "We'll need your year in advance so that we can start having conversations with bloggers." And I was like, "A year? Is that how much lead time you guys need? A year?" I had no idea. So I was constantly learning the difference between the world that I had come from. And stand-up also is very immediate. Like there was one time where one afternoon I got a call saying somebody had dropped out from talking to Frank Skinner about stuff. So it can all happen very quickly, whereas literature is very, very slow-paced. And I took that to mean sometimes that things had been forgotten, and they absolutely hadn't. everyone had it under control, but they're not working with that now that I was used to of like television and comedy and stuff like that. So I really had to just sort of wind my neck in and just calm down and just let people do their jobs. The other thing as well is I didn't know a lot of the jobs that people did. I didn't really know what it was. So essentially I ended up paying somebody else to do the job that the editor had actually made herself available to me to do. So they just saw me as this kind of lone wolf who was like just getting on with it by herself. Meanwhile, I'm just hemorrhaging cash going, can you help me? Can you do a spell check on it? And can you just make sure the grammar's right? And can you blah, blah, blah? And I was paying somebody else to do that. So I really had a very steep learning curve. And even most recently, the editor I now have, she commented about, I think she said something about cutting away from a scene or something like that, and it's just language that they use in literature, and I'm like, cutting away? I'll just make a note of that, another term that I never knew. So it's a constant learning curve, and I don't know if anyone is like venturing into the world of literature or has done or whatever, but I don't know if you found it the same way, but I'm just like, it's almost like an onslaught of new that I had to learn to navigate. And I loved it as well, by the way. And another thing that I noticed is that other authors are so supportive. Like, I mean, I don't know what they're saying behind my back, but like to your face, like, oh my gosh, there's so much support in the literary world for especially like newbies who are coming sort of laterally from like other industries and stuff like that. But just anyways, wherever you are on the journey, people were really, really supportive, and I really appreciated that. So eventually, after a lot of back and forth with my editor, I finished the book, which gave me a brand new problem. Publication in lockdown. Dun, 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 disaster. What is this pandemic? I'm just checking the time here. So I was, because I had no point of reference, you would think I'd be devastated. Oh man, my book's coming out in lockdown. But I'd never brought out a book before. I had no clue. So I was like, cool. They obviously knew what would be normal for publishing a book. And so they, when I say they, I'm talking about the publisher, so the marketing team, sales, all those guys, publicity even, they had to really think outside of the box because there was no book launch, there was no in-person events, there was no signing, there was none of those things that they could really rely on. Even like posters, couldn't do any of that because nobody was on the underground. So they had to think outside of the box. So I don't know if I've ever done as many podcasts as I did this year. I was just constantly doing this circuit of podcasts. But it was brilliant because you could do it all from home. I was like a pig in, the proverbial, because I was just like, I am literally in my pajamas from here down, so I don't have to go anywhere. And we just found ways to adapt. So I wrote some articles for magazines, so that was another way of getting the name of the book out there. Sometimes, as you've seen, TV shows might have you on a Zoom, so I got to do that. And I did actually get to do some in person. So I did Sunday brunch in the lead up to the book coming out. And then probably early January, I think it was, I got an email from the publicist saying, Graham Norton Show would like to have you on. I just said, so which Graham Norton Show? Didn't compute. And I kept reading the thing again, like the Graham Norton radio show. Is it radio show? No, it's the Graham Norton Show. Okay. Graham Norton Show wants me to say, okay, all right, yeah, that happens every day. Graham Norton Show had me on. And what I realized, well, I don't know, maybe I'm selling myself short, but I don't think I would have made it on during normal times. But it was because there was a lockdown, because those US celebrities aren't coming over, and because of the new format of the show, with a virtual audience rather than a live one, all those things, I think allowed for me to get a break. So publication in lockdown got me on the Graham Norton Show. Fab. Thanks, pandemic. But not thanks for all the other horrible things that have happened. Anyway, so those were the many challenges. The one thing that I was particularly sad about was that I didn't get to sign any books. So I'm delighted to be able to sign books, whether you brought them or you buy them in the shop, because we thought about how can we get around this particular problem of not being able to do in-person signings. And there's something really special about not just having a signed book, but have somebody sign it for you. Somebody write, Diana, lovely to meet you, Andi Osho, or whatever it is. So the suggestion that they had was book plates, which is a piece of card or something like that you'd put inside the book. And it's just not the same. It's just like, I didn't want to do it. And actually, we talked about it with the publishers, and they suggested that's what we do. And I just said, you know what? If there were no we're out of the pandemic, then give people a bit of card. It's just like, where am I going to cut out a cornflakes and just go, oh, dear Derek, oh, all the best. I just didn't want to do it. So up until I'd say about May, there were about 8 signed copies of Asking for a Friend, and my family had all of them. So it really is a genuine delight. The festival that I went to in August, that was the first time I got to sign in person, and this will be the second. So as much as there were a lot of challenges and a lot of things that I quote-unquote missed out on by publishing during lockdown, I feel like I got a lot of cool stuff, or a lot of cool stuff happened just by chance out of that being the situation. It's kind of making lemonade. But then the next challenge, oh God. So there was so I actually at the beginning of the very first lockdown, I'll say to myself, just chill, girl. You don't have to be doing anything right now, but because I'm self-employed, I'm a freelancer, I don't know if there's any other freelancers in here, I went into a hyperdrive panic. Like, what am I gonna do? Well, how long is this thing gonna last? So I quickly wrote some ideas, and I was like, hi, Katie, I'd love to pitch some ideas to you for a new book. And so I did, and at first I went to her with a follow-up to Asking for a Friend. Asking for a Friend is about 3 girlfriends. I should have said this maybe up top, but it's about 3 girlfriends who are having no luck in their love lives, and so they decide to go out and ask people out in real life, but for each other. And it all goes wrong with hilarious consequences. So I said, yeah, I've got more I want to say about these women. I want to talk about, how fatherhood plays a role in these women's lives, and yeah, I think there's another book in them. And she was like, no, I don't think so. Not that she didn't like the idea, but she was like, let's look at creating another world, a new world. And though I was disappointed not to revisit these 3 women that I'd sort of fallen in love with, I kind of appreciated the fact that she said that, and I'm really glad that she did. So instead, I pitched her another idea about a stand-up comedian, don't know where I got that from, an aspiring comedian who has no luck on the circuit, and then she's too much. Everyone tells her she's too much, she's too loud, she's too black, she's too this, she's too that, and she ends up falling in love with this guy who loves everything about her. But he doesn't tell her he's got 2 kids. And then she finds out he's got 2 kids. Now also, alongside that, one of the oldest kid is kind of like this junior comedy ledge. And so this lead character, Abby, she finds herself kind of trying to be a stepmom, trying not to compete with this kid who's having a more successful career than she is, and in the middle of all of trying to be a good human being and not too much, but be too much, because that's who she is. So I pitched that because it's a little bit true, and they liked it. So yeah, and so I had to start all over again. And my talent agent, who looks after acting and writing, she was like, when I told her I'd pitched another book and that I got a deal, she was just like, why? Because she'd been on the phone to me and me like, I can't do it. At one point, I wanted to give the advance back. That's where it got to. I sat down with Richard, my literary agent. I was like, Richard, mate, the money's going back. I don't care. You keep your mission. That's all good. It's going back. I was done at one point, and then here I was again pitching and getting the pitch accepted and having to start the whole thing. Should we go back to slide 1? I don't even know. I started the whole thing again. But I learned some new stuff. And so I am taking what I learned from that first attempt, that debut novel, Asking for a Friend, trying something different. Tough Crowd is written in the first person. And she's obviously a different type of woman and a different world, but I like to have a little crossover. So there's a couple of references. If anyone knows Asking for a Friend, when they read Tough Crowd, they'll go, hang on a minute, that bar was in Asking for a Friend. I like tying up universes. I mean, I'm no Marvel, but... So that was a challenge. And then my last challenge, which is where I'm at now, understanding challenge and reward. And there's not much that I want to say about that other than when I was going through these, I was just like, oh, hang on a minute, these are all challenges. I haven't said anything about the rewards of writing Asking for a Friend. And I realized that literally with every reward that I got came a challenge. And with every challenge came a massive reward. So the first reward was obviously getting the book deal, and then the challenge of writing it. And then there was a challenge of a lockdown. Well, the reward was the Graham Norton. And another challenge of how do I follow up this book? The reward was being encouraged to step away, step out of my comfort zone, and it gave me the room to pitch something to them that I wouldn't have necessarily given them. And it's given me a chance to kind of purge this story from my history. It's very different from the real person. I'm just saying that down the camera, just as a legal thing. So every challenge actually came with a reward, and every reward came with a challenge. Just to sum up, I with you guys of like, I did this, I don't know if you guys know the Landmark Forum. Yeah, those guys. Some people do, they're like, they're not a cult. But they do, I remember one thing a facilitator saying, that everyone thinks that they need to live a life without problems. Actually, you just want sexier problems. That's the truth. You don't want problems like, I can't put food on the table, or I don't have enough money to put fuel in my car, if I can find any. You want problems like, I've got to write a book, or I've got this opportunity to realize a creative project that I've always wanted to do with a great resume or a great pitch. So I'm just going to sum up and say, here's to us all having sexy problems. Not those sort. Sexy problems. And now I think Janet's going to come back, and if you guys have any questions. Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Andi, that was absolutely fabulous and so engaging. I mean, just mesmerizing from beginning to end. And what a very humble note to end on. I mean, it is about what you're saying basically is how privileged you feel to have had those problems which felt insurmountable, even to the point of giving back that check.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I was done.
Yeah. So, questions. Scylla.
Write a book that I've been writing for 100 years nearly. Without even putting a word on a paper, but I'm going to try.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely fab. I loved it. I'm really inspired by you. Thank you.
Oh, amazing. That's so lovely to hear. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, we won't be seeing you at council meetings then.
Should be busy writing. Yeah. Should be finding balance.
Yeah. Depends what becomes the day job, right? Yeah, well inspirational already.
Great. Yeah. Happy days.
Yeah. Dinah, the mic is on its way.
You talked about the learning curve, how much you learned. Did you learn from other writers at all? Did you find yourself reading and learning from that, or remembering books that you read? Or was that actually more of a hindrance?
No, you're right actually, and I did mean to mention that, because when I started, I think what was already embedded in me was a real love of, the books that I'd read growing up, and probably up until, I would say, probably late 20s, I was just reading fiction all the time. And then as I started to move into acting, then I started to read more plays and sort of non-fiction and stuff. So the fiction that I was reading sort of fell by the wayside, but it was already imprinted in me. And then when I started writing again, I just realized I didn't know what I was doing. I just went back to just to get a vibe, not to copy anybody's style, but just to get a feel just to remind myself of what I'd picked up unconsciously when I was reading, from an early age. So yeah, you're absolutely right. I definitely, and it was just sort of random snippets of stuff, like I was dipping into Nick Hornby and something else and, whatever, but it was more to just steep myself in it rather than to learn something specific. Although I did remember looking at a book specifically for grammar. Like, how do they do the talking? How is talking happening?
Any writers in particular that you found helped you? Mention Nick Hornby, who's a wonderful writer, I think. Were there others?
I mean, I really loved those first books that sort of broke through, Fever Pitch and High Fidelity, but what happened is that as soon as people knew that I was in the literary world, I was just getting inundated with proofs. And so that was like super helpful. So I'd be writing my thing, but also reading other people's proofs. And I just got to see really great work before it hit the bookshelves. So like Daisy Buchanan, Insatiable, Daly for Aunties. And what was really great is everything was like really different. So I wasn't reading like the same thing over and over again. I'm reading Eva Verde's, oh gosh, I can't remember the name of it. But anyways, I'll post it on my gram. But I just kept getting sent proofs, and that was invaluable because I was getting stuff hot off the press of like, this is where we're at today.
Yeah. I can't remember which author it was. It was somebody who writes kind of historical, bodice ripper type things, and she was speaking at an event where I was, and she said, always 1,000 words a day. Doesn't matter what I do, 1,000 words a day. And I was talking to her later and I went, that's really impressive. She went, oh, I'm lying. I'm lying. It's just like some days I'm just like, no, I can't be asked. Yeah, anyway, true. But so once you were flying, once you were just like, I'm not going to obsessively edit and check and stop myself. I mean, did you have a kind of target, or you just let it kind of come, and when it came, and if it was 500 this day and 2,000 that day, it didn't matter?
Yeah, I mean, my problem is too many words, as you probably noticed from my talking, is that it was actually volume, like an overabundance of volume. It was more like just getting the job done. Yeah. So I didn't ever struggle with word count. I wasn't ever like, oh, how am I going to get to 1,000 words or whatever? It's just like, how am I going to cut down this pile of junk that I've created, in amongst which will be the gems that I'm looking for.
Yeah, I mean, it's never easy, but you obviously had to work to find the process that served you best in terms of get it out, then do the pruning and the editing, and the refining. Sure. Yeah.
And I would say as well, like, there's often a lot of dialogue around, and this happens in stand-up and other fields as well, is if you're not doing this, then you're not a, if you're not doing this, you're not a writer, or you're not a stand-up, or you're not an actor. It's like, if you say you are, you are.
Yeah.
And so if you can write 1,000 words a day, if that's your MO, then do that. But if it's like, but writing is also sitting around thinking and being with your characters. Like I did a TV show one time, or a pilot in the States, and they have a lot of writers behind the scenes, like creators, and they said, right, to the two presenters of this thing, me and this other guy, we're going to get you a writer. What I imagined was a guy with a book, or a woman with a book, writing things down and going, here, I wrote you a joke. And what this writer did, he would just like riff stuff. Wouldn't it be funny if you said blah, 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 or how about this? And they'd just chat shit, basically. And I was like, it took about half a day for me to realize he's writing. And because I just thought, listen, stop with the jibber jabber and write some stuff down. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? That was where my head was at, because I was imagining that writing is literally a pen and paper or a type, and he wasn't. So he was doing it on the fly, and we got what we needed.
Yeah. Yes. The mic is about to.
arrive.
Hi, thanks again for the talk. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. But my question was around the marketing of the book, so once it had been written. Can you tell us about your experience of having to hand over your baby to the marketing department, who then, I imagine, worked with you to present it in some form, and how easy or hard was that to hand over that part of the process to the marketing team?
Yeah, good question. So what I had to do was humble myself because even though I know nothing about this field, I still thought I knew best, quietly. And so I had to defer to their wisdom. I had to defer to the fact that they've done this many times over. I had to let go of certain ideas I had about what the cover would look like. There was one point where, cover ideas were bouncing backwards and forwards. I was like, great, I'd like to see these with, 4 different colors. I'd like to see these ones with, and my editor came back and she was like, so here's the thing. We'll do this one and maybe this one. And she was very polite about it, but she was like, if we go down this road, we'll be here for forever picking a cover. So I had to and the actual cover, the color of the cover is teal kind of color, which, I don't know, it's, oh, is that not a thing anymore? Have they gone? Oh, okay. So the color of the challenge is kind of basically the front cover of the book. I didn't love it. But then it grew on me. And actually, what I was imagining was this pink, but there was already Queenie and a bunch of other stuff that had exactly that. And so she said, yeah, sometimes you do want to look like what's already out there so that people have the association, but sometimes you totally don't. You want your book to be like, that's a new color that pops when people see it on the shelf, and when they're looking for it, boom, there it is. You know what I mean? So that happened. And then what happened was they changed the name. What? Yeah, that happened. So originally, as I said, I don't know if you caught that, but it was called My Friend Fancies You. And I thought that was brilliant. I loved it, and I loved telling people my friend fancies you, and people would go, oh yeah, like when you're at school, and da 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 da. Yeah, exactly, when you go up to a boy, or whatever. And then someone from the team said, we've had a chat, and we think that the dating game would work really well. I know, right? And they said the dating game would work really well. I was like, oh God, I really like My Friend Fancies You. All right, yeah, go on, the dating game. It is a game. They play this game of going in and goes out or whatever. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, dating game. Yeah, I can sort of see the cover. Anyway, so that editor left, and then a new editor came in. She said, I've spoken to the team. I was like, again? This team must be in constant chats. And we don't think the dating game works. So we think asking for a friend would work. I was like, I had to humble myself. And I really didn't like it to start with. And I thought asking for a friend was something that people said to be sarcastic. And I just couldn't connect as much with the title. I could see why they had thought of it, but I just couldn't connect with it in the same way that I had with the dating game, before that, My Friend Fancies You. But just like the cover color over time, and seeing the comps of like the different types of books that are in this genre, I was just like, asking for a friend. Oh yeah, okay. All right, I'm on board, I get it. So, and there's many things like that can happen along the way with the marketing, but, you really, it's kind of theirs in a way, and it almost feels like, in a way, they're just being polite asking you, as the author, especially a debut novel. You've done it before, so what do you know, really? What do I know? So it was probably in my interest to let the experts do what they do. Some stuff is not going to be as comfortable. I'm not going to always, be into it right from the beginning. But eventually, everything they did, I got on board with, not just because I had to, but because I got it. I got what they were trying to achieve, and got that they know this market better than I ever will.
I definitely think you need to stop telling that bit of the story, because I thought asking for a friend, what it means to me is I'm really asking for myself. So I thought that's really smart.
Oh yeah, that too, totally that too. No, but exactly, it had many meanings, and that's why they chose it. Yeah. But my first association was like, you know, with people saying, I'm trying to get some petrol, I'm just asking for a friend, you know, and it was like a snide, sort of cynical thing to say. And I was like, I don't know if I want the book to be called that. But then there was all these multiple meanings and layers.
Especially
to it, so.
the end point. Yes. And not to give anything away to those who haven't read it. Yeah. No, I'd never ask for a friend for petrol, but there are things I would ask for.
No, that's a really good point. That is a really good point.
You mentioned just now about running away to America when you decided that stand-up was making you miserable. And obviously the escape to America, I will give that much away, is a kind of important for the central character, our heroine, in terms of that's what she thinks of when it all gets too difficult. Is it kind of the mythic America where everybody reinvents themselves? Is that what was going on there?
For me, or for both of us, maybe, well, I went to Los Angeles, so it's not even really America, is it?
No.
It's not. it's a different place, and as much as, I mean, the cliches that you expect of Los Angeles are true, but it's also just a city, you know, and it's a functioning city like any other, with actually other things going on. I was surprised to find, but I really, as I said, I wanted to get away from the container of comedian. And I just wanted to give myself a blank canvas because nobody knew who I was and nobody cared that I was there. Nobody was particularly desperate to get me in for auditions because they didn't know who I was. No stand-ups, bookers were clamoring to have me on at their shows. I remember trying to get on at the Comedy Store, and they have what do they call it? Is it open mic? Or potluck, that's it. Where basically everyone puts their name on a list, and there are people who I just think were just looking for somewhere, like a bit of shade. Do you know what I mean? Like, weren't particularly bothered about going on stage, but they put their names on the list. It was crazy. And I sort of put a couple of notes next to my name thinking, I don't want to be a dick, but I've done some stuff, you know, so I put a couple of notes next to my name. I didn't get on. I was like, okay, so that must mean that the people that got on this show must be really good if I can get. I'm not saying I'm amazing, but do you know what I mean? Like if I can get on and I've got a couple of TV credits to my name or whatever, I went on and it was like watching like 15 people have a breakdown, and I was so furious. I was so annoyed, but it was just another reminder to myself that me being here doesn't really matter. It's liberating, but it's also frustrating. And I went through both of those experiences of being completely liberated by the experience of like, nobody cares that I'm here. Nobody knows that I'm here. I could drop off the face of the earth in terms of the industry and no one would give a shit. But equally, it got frustrating at times. It's like, I've done things. I've been on panel shows. I've done my time. I've acted.
So in a sense, you thought you wanted to reinvent yourself, but actually you didn't.
Well, no, it was a mix. But yeah, they were, even though they were opposed, they were happening in kind of together. Yeah. So there was a part of me that I did want to reinvent because I needed to break out of that mold, but I also wanted to use it to facilitate the breaking out. I think that's probably what it was.
And was everyone in LA far too cool to notice your English accent?
No, gosh, you guys have got to go to LA. If you've got an English accent, you get yourself over there. You can get whatever you want. They love it. No, it was really funny, like just beguiling. The strangest thing to me about it is a really interesting experience of just them hearing my accent before they see the color of my skin. They relate to me more as a Brit first. Oh my God, your accent is so, oh my, where are you from? It's so cute. And then my blackness is like secondary. So if I was to do an African American accent, I feel like I would get treated differently. And it's really interesting little nuance to their society. So I was just like, I don't want to be treated like that. I was seeing what you do to your African American community. I was like Mary Poppins when I was out there, do you know what I mean? Like, I was just like, I'm just going to be straight with you guys. So you just play it up.
I did a year in the States when I was a student. I came back sounding like Princess Anne. Question here.
Andy, thank you so much. I'm just interested, you talked about challenge and reward, and you talked about having sexy problems, and your background is as a stand-up and as a screenwriter and as an actor. And then you talked about the challenges of writing a novel and starting at square one, it being very a slow process. Inside yourself, moving forward, have you balanced out the different life experiences of that immediacy of your stand-up and your acting against the longevity and the attention to detail of your novel writing? And do you feel that the novel writing is taking a greater part of your life, or are they equally balanced and equally part of you because you're so effusive as a person? It's that picture of novelists sometimes is, as you said, quite slow and methodical, which is not necessarily how you come across.
Thanks, I think. Yeah, I do get very enthusiastic about stuff, but I love talking about creativity generally. I have a podcast, Creative Source, where I yak on about creativity every episode. But in answer to your question, it is an ongoing consideration that I have to be in all the time. And 1 week or 1 month I'll get it right, and then the next I'll get it wrong. In terms of, or not wrong, but I'll get out of balance and things won't be working and it won't feel right. But in terms of time, writing definitely dominates because it's such a needy baby. You know, it just requires so much more of your time. With an audition, I've managed to get it down to maybe like putting 2 or 3 hours in to be able to create a tape and send that off. Whereas with writing, it's just like a daily slog. And the thing that I used to sort of say to my mates is, it's like, there's just so many words. Like, you use all the words. And they just can't be any words. They have to be good words. You know, you can't just go and then submit that. You know what I mean? Like, so, and then hope, well, I did 100,000 words. You didn't have to say they had to be different. So, yeah, so it's a constant balance. But in terms of my heart, you know, that space that I gave myself in America was so that there could be room for all of them.
That's interesting. It's really interesting. Well, we've reached the end of our time, but Andi will be downstairs behind the book counter. So can I ask you again to join me in thanking Andi for a really, really lovely start to the festival. Thank you. It was lovely. That's so nice. Thank you.